Welcome to another deep dive. We get to dive deep into the sources you share with us and pull out those hidden gems, those little nuggets of insight that could help us all see things a bit differently.
And today we're tackling something quite unusual and fascinating, a YouTube transcript detailing a regression hypnosis session. Someone really went deep, huh?
Oh, absolutely. And this isn't just someone casually recalling their dreams.
Mhm.
This is Basia, the subject of this session. And we're going to explore the really key moments she experienced, the influences that potentially had a huge impact on her.
We'll look at the possible connections to past lives that came up, the descriptions of energetic influences, and how all of this could relate to the struggles Basia is dealing with in her present life.
I mean, think about it. We all have baggage, right? But what if some of it isn't even from this life? What if it's echoes from experiences we don't consciously remember? That's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
It certainly opens up a lot of questions, and as we get into the transcript, you'll hear about things that are very personal, perhaps even unexpected. Our goal isn't to sensationalize, but to try to understand the key points, to give you, the listener, a new way to think about how these past experiences and energetic influences might be shaping our reality right now.
So where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, the session starts with Basia in this visualized space, right? It's closed off, empty, and she's feeling very lost, and from the description, quite helpless.
It's not just an empty room, though. The transcript talks about a hologram, creating this illusion of openness, like a projection system outside of this closed area, making it seem bigger than it is. What do you make of that?
I think it points to a potential disconnect. On the one hand, Basia's feeling this sense of confinement, right? This closed space could be a reflection of her own emotions or decisions, as the transcript suggests. But then there's this facade, this external projection that isn't entirely accurate. It's almost like a mask hiding the true inner state.
And then, well, this is where it gets really intriguing. This space, this closed-off space, is described as being hacked. When Basia experiences these negative emotions, specifically fear and anger directed towards a man, her initial mental creation, which was probably peaceful at first, is infiltrated. What are your thoughts on this whole hacking idea?
Oh, it definitely suggests a vulnerability, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The idea that being in a negative emotional state could be an entry point for something external to gain influence. And what's even more striking is that the transcript introduces this reptilian-like entity referred to as a lizard, who is described as laughing at this development.
So not just observing, but actually taking pleasure in her distress. It feels very opportunistic, almost predatory.
Right, like this entity is somehow benefiting from Basia's emotional vulnerability. And it's hinted that this isn't just a one-off event, but this lizard is part of a larger group with a similar system of interference. So we're seeing this dynamic right from the start, this interplay between Basia's internal world and these external forces that could be manipulative.
Makes you wonder what you're letting in when you're in a low state, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And then we get to Basia's intentions for the session. She specifically states that she wants to resolve this fear of life she's carrying and this feeling of constantly being put under, controlled by someone.
Yeah, these aren't just small anxieties, right? It sounds like a fundamental struggle for autonomy, for a sense of well-being.
Absolutely. And that leads us into the regressions. Basia isn't just exploring, she's actively looking to understand and overcome these deeply ingrained feelings of unease.
And that takes us back in time, doesn't it?
Yes. The first regression takes us to what seems to be a past life, around the year 1860. The scene unfolds at a pond, or maybe it's a small lake. There are 5 children present.
Basia identifies as a young boy named Tymon, around 5 years old, and there are these 2 older children, maybe 9 to 12 years old, who are supposed to be watching the younger ones. It sounds like an everyday scene by the water.
Right, but then it takes a tragic turn. One of the children, a 3-year-old, falls into the water and drowns. And the transcript clearly states that Tymon tried to save the child.
It's heartbreaking to imagine, especially as a young child yourself. The shock of witnessing something like that must be immense.
The transcript describes Tymon's initial reaction as pure adrenaline, that fight or flight response kicking in, and then the inevitable shock, the crying, and this overwhelming fear and anxiety.
Not just the death of another child, but the weight of trying to intervene, to save them.
And here's the crucial part. This past life trauma is specifically identified as the root of Basia's fear of life in her current life. It's not just about death, but it's also connected to a fear of loss, of a lower quality of life, of stress in general. Like the initial shock expanded into this broader feeling of vulnerability.
It's almost like the system got overloaded.
Right.
And now even the potential for hardship triggers that same fear response.
Exactly. And the transcript goes on to say that Timon carried this guilt and these unresolved emotions throughout his entire life, forever associating ponds and lakes with that terrible event.
Trauma doesn't just disappear, does it? And this connection between the past and present becomes even clearer when the transcript talks about Basia's present-day panic in deep water, specifically when she can't feel the ground beneath her feet.
The details are really poignant. The drowning happened while they were playing with a stick, the younger child lost their footing, and Timon actually inhaled water while he was trying to save the child. So those physical sensations, that panic, it seems to have left a very real imprint on Basia's current life.
And that guilt, that sense of responsibility that Tymon felt, is still present in Basia. It's like a thread connecting these two lifetimes.
Now, if we go back to that reptilian entity, that lizard figure, there's a connection to this past life trauma that's, well, a bit disturbing.
It wasn't just a random act of opportunism. The transcript says that this entity was actually waiting for the intense emotions, that surge of energy that would follow the drowning. And even more unsettling, it suggested that it had known Basia as this energetic being before that lifetime even began.
Which implies a deeper level of involvement, almost a pre-existing connection.
And it seems that the intense emotional release from the drowning acted as a trigger, a beacon for this entity to interfere.
It's chilling, really. The transcript suggests that the drowning was a potential event that this entity could exploit. It even mentions that they laughed at the children's lack of foresight.
Preying on vulnerability. And it didn't end there. This entity created a hologram of the drowned child that appeared to Tymon as a ghost. And this went on for years.
It's like a prolonged manipulation, a constant reminder of that traumatic experience. And what's even more insidious is that the holographic child constantly told Tymon that it would never leave him, would always be with him. It even promised to watch him grow up.
It sounds comforting on the surface, but imagine the energetic toll.
Exactly. And the transcript indicates that there was this constant drain on Tymon's energy, specifically from his guilt, his mental energy linked to that tragic event.
So he was literally an energy source. It's quite sinister when you think about it.
It's described that Tymon was perceived as having what we might call schizophrenia today, constantly interacting with this holographic child throughout his life. Even as a young adult, at 19 years old, he was still talking to this apparition.
Imagine the isolation. And tragically, Tymon's life was cut short at just 21 years old. He was killed during a fight after being banished. But it seems the entity's influence didn't end with his physical death.
No, it followed him into the afterlife, according to the transcript. Tymon's subtle body, that energetic essence, is described as following the hologram of the drowned child, which was really the reptilian entity in disguise, to this artificially created scene. It's a boat on the same pond where the drowning happened, with the child present.
It sounds like a twisted attempt to offer comfort, a fabricated resolution.
And Tymon perceived this as happiness, a change in the timeline where the child survived. He felt no more fear associated with the pond.
But it was all a fabrication.
Right. And to maintain this fabricated reality, the transcript mentions this holographic fog or a substance that was present in this constructed afterlife. It created a state of lethargy and disorientation for Tymon, making him feel like he belonged there, preventing him from questioning or moving on.
So he was trapped.
Yeah.
And this manipulation persisted until the decision for his next incarnation, which is Basia's current life.
It's almost like a cycle of influence, spanning across lifetimes.
The connections are quite startling, and it's explicitly stated that Basia's current life, her struggles, are directly linked to the emotions and experiences from that past life as Tymon.
But there were other lives in between, right?
Yes, the transcript mentions other incarnations that weren't directly related to the drowning trauma, but they were marked by violence and physical pain. Specifically, Basia experienced a life as a woman who was mistreated by a possessive man. And this is where we see the potential origin for some of the other emotional patterns that Basia is dealing with, like the anger and resentment towards a man that came up during her meditation, the same emotions that allowed the reptilian entity to hack her mental space.
It's not just one isolated incident. These different lifetimes seem to be energetically connected, like a chain reaction, influencing Basia's overall emotional state.
It really emphasizes the complexity of our inner world.
And before Basia incarnated into her current life, there was a crucial moment described in the transcript. It involved a pact, an agreement made with this reptilian entity.
But it wasn't a forceful abduction. It sounds like there was an element of consent involved, even if it was under false pretenses.
It's described that the entity, still appearing as the drowned child, convinced Basia to reincarnate. The persuasion was based on the idea that she hadn't fully understood her experiences as Tymon, and living as a woman might offer a different perspective, an easier way to work through this underlying fear of life.
So manipulating her desire for resolution.
Precisely. And going even further back, the transcript details Basia's first encounter with this entity. This initial interaction is really important because it seems to have established this pattern of trust that was later exploited.
It's fascinating how it unfolded. The entity didn't appear as something monstrous or scary. It presented itself as a kind, caring, wise old man, like a grandpa figure.
The transcript highlights how simple that first encounter was. The entity just said, "Come, child," and Basia, in her subtle body form, was drawn to him. It speaks to the power of suggestion.
It also highlights how ingrained some of our assumptions are. Basia resonating with this archetype, the idea that an older person is inherently wise and trustworthy, it was a learned program that this entity cleverly exploited.
And the agreement itself played on that very human desire to feel needed, to have a sense of purpose. The entity suggested that Basia would have a chance to be a hero in her next life.
Implying that she had this lack of self-worth that the entity could leverage.
Exactly. Bringing us to the hacking of Basia's meditation space. This was a sanctuary she created before going to sleep, a place of peace, perhaps using a guided meditation, or just her own visualization.
But the recording she used seems particularly relevant. The transcript suggests that it induced this foggy, disoriented state, similar to the fabricated afterlife scene with Tymon. This could have further enhanced her suggestibility, her trust in whatever she was experiencing.
And it was during this very night, during this meditation, that the hacking occurred. It wasn't a sudden event, but a process that began when Basia enjoyed these feelings that the recording evoked and tried to recreate them.
It's like she unknowingly opened the door.
And then the entity exploited her vulnerability. That moment when those negative emotions resurface, the anger, the fear, the helplessness.
It makes you think about those things we use to relax or escape.
Absolutely. And the transcript even suggests that the melody of the recording might have been designed to influence her subconscious, which is a whole other layer of manipulation.
It's like this multi-layered attack. And it seems that this vulnerability connected to a very real trigger in her present life, her husband's anger. When he gets angry, even over small things, it triggers her own anger.
It points to a pattern of reactivity that's likely rooted in these deeper influences. And when Basia was first observed in that hacked meditation space during the hypnosis session, her state, her reactions, it all conveyed this deep sense of helplessness, particularly in relation to the man in her life.
It sounds like she was trapped on multiple levels.
But the hypnosis session wasn't just about uncovering these things, it was about actively releasing them. The transcript describes a cleansing process that Basia underwent.
So what were the key elements of that release?
Well, the first step was awareness. Basia gaining an understanding of the hacking, the past life influences, and all the different ways it was affecting her.
Knowledge is a tool for empowerment.
Then there was the release of what's called the inner saboteur, those ingrained feelings of doubt, inadequacy, self-criticism. It was visualized and released as green lights, like these diodes leaving her energy field.
A powerful image of letting go. And then what?
The emotions and mental programs connected to the pawn incident, the responsibility, the fear, the shock, the numbness, the grief, all released as red lights.
It's like clearing out all that energetic clutter.
Even that deep-seated need to be a hero, that agreement she made between lives, it was acknowledged and released as violet light.
Wow. And what happened after all those releases?
Basia reconnected with her true essence, her potential. It's described as this feeling of renewed strength and resilience.
That sounds amazing. So about finding your own power after all that manipulation.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the big, obvious emotions. Even those subtle, unexpressed emotions from the pawn incident, like an unexpressed cry, a misunderstanding, were acknowledged and released.
It's like every little bit counts.
Right. And the deep-seated fear of experiencing a lower quality of life, the anxiety related to stress, that was released too.
Seems like she was carrying a lot.
And finally, the guilt and remorse from her past life as Tymon, that she had carried for so long, was acknowledged and let go.
It's like a weight lifted, right?
Exactly. The intrusive thoughts, the feeling of being abnormal because of the holographic child, all that was released too. Even the attachment to the drowned child, that was gently severed.
So breaking free from that constant energetic connection.
And the manipulative words spoken by the reptilian entity, those promises, those were rejected and their power neutralized.
I mean, think about it. Words can have such an impact, even those spoken long ago.
Absolutely. And the entity's laughter, those triggers related to her husband were released too. Even the energetic residue from the drowning itself, the sensation of water in the lungs, the suffocation, it was cleared from her energy field.
Releasing the trauma from the physical body.
The energetic imprint of the stomach wound from Tymon's death, the trauma of that violent end, that was addressed and released too. And the feelings of neglect and loneliness from childhood in that past life, those were let go as well.
So it was a very thorough cleansing.
Very thorough. That disorienting fog substance from the manipulated afterlife, the programs of feeling paralyzed, those were released as gray light. Influences from the current life recording that induced that lethargic state and might have contained subliminal messages, those were cleared too.
It's about regaining mental clarity. And the transcript mentions Basia's surprise at these revelations, the connections between the drowning and her fear of water, the extent of the manipulation.
Those aha moments can be so powerful.
And that lack of self-trust that she had, that was addressed too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Moving towards greater self-reliance. And then the work shifted to her relationship with her husband. Basia released her negative beliefs about his intentions and her feelings of unimportance in the relationship, visualized as dark blue light.
It's about shifting the power dynamic.
Old patterns of verbal conflict, that mutual emotional numbness that was addressed to, creating space for better communication.
That's so important.
And here's where a past life connection comes into play. It's revealed that Basia was her husband's mother in another lifetime, a mother who had been emotionally distant due to the difficult circumstances of that time.
It's like their roles are reversed now.
Exactly. And Basia's potential guilt about that past life, that was explored and revealed to be more a matter of misunderstanding than actual neglect.
It's so interesting how these past life connections can provide context for our current relationships.
Basia then released those feelings of helplessness, the need to please, the numbness, the feeling of inferiority, the powerlessness, the confusion, and that tendency to take his words as attacks.
It's like shedding all those old patterns of relating.
And the negative words she had internalized from others, those were released too.
Reclaiming her own inner voice.
And the anger and resentment she held towards her husband, that was released too, along with the memory of the emotional weight of those negative interactions.
It's about energetic clearing. And there was another interesting release, right? That belief that older individuals are inherently wiser.
Yes, that ingrained assumption was challenged, empowering her own inner knowing. And along with that, she released the tendency to believe that others know better than she does, fostering greater self-reliance.
So important.
Other fears surfaced and were addressed, like the fear of heights and confinement, indicating this broader clearing of anxiety.
Fear could be so debilitating.
Absolutely. A childhood fear of the reptilian entity itself, a memory of seeing it through her window, that was released too. And the shame and confusion related to a childhood experience with a boy, including a blockage of sexual energy in her ovaries, those were addressed, and the block was released.
Wow, releasing trauma on so many levels.
And that feeling of being cold, emotionless, which seemed to be linked to that past life as the distant mother, that was released as well.
It's fascinating how these energetic imprints can linger.
Family relationships came into focus, and Basia released that tendency to take too much responsibility for her family members and to impose her own views, allowing them free will. She also released anything that they had imposed on her, creating healthier boundaries.
That's so important in families, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And then there was this profound recognition, the possibility that her son might be the reincarnation of the drowned child from that past life as Tymon.
Wow. That changes everything.
It really does. And with this awareness, Basia released that need to control her family, trusting in their own paths.
That's true empowerment.
It is. And then, in a powerful act of reclaiming her sovereignty, Basia actively removed her energy and her personal information from the reptilian entity, its incubators, and any associated beings. All pacts, contracts, and agreements were declared null and void.
It's like severing those ties once and for all.
Exactly. And she energetically destroyed the entity and its ship in her reality.
Taking back control.
And then she recalled all her energy and genetic material from anywhere outside herself, reclaiming her power.
Coming back to wholeness.
The session then moved towards integration, with Basia actively expanding her essence throughout her subtle body, inviting joy, love, and self-confidence to permeate her physical form.
Consciously shifting her energetic state.
And there was a thorough check to make sure all the issues had been addressed, followed by a final clearing of any remaining adverse energies from her physical body.
So like a total reset.
And she connected with every cell of her physical body, sharing the insights from the session and her expanded energy, bringing her physical self into alignment with her energetic shifts.
It's like a full body integration.
It is. And then a future scenario was envisioned. Basia, no longer burdened by the responsibilities of others, observing her husband with understanding, maintaining control over her thoughts, and approaching life with a renewed sense of understanding and adventure.
It's like painting a new picture for the future.
And to test these changes, fear triggers were simulated: heights, water, bees. In each instance, Basia felt comfortable and in control, understanding the bees rather than fearing them, experiencing peace in the water, and even feeling a thrill rather than fear in response to heights.
So her responses were completely transformed. And how did the session end?
With a simple, powerful message directed to Basia's physical self. Be good to yourself and notice yourself. A beautiful reminder.
So what an incredible journey, right? From that feeling of being lost and controlled to understanding these past life influences and manipulations to ultimately reclaiming her power and finding that inner peace.
It really highlights how much we might be carrying without even realizing it.
The connection between the past drowning and the fear of water, the long-term manipulation, and that past life connection with her husband, it's all so eye-opening.
This deep dive shows how much we can learn from these seemingly unconventional sources. It pushes us to think beyond the surface of our reality.
And it leaves us with a lot to think about. What hidden influences are shaping our own lives? What past experiences or energetic connections are playing a role in our present?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope Basia's experience has given you some new insights and a fresh perspective on your own journey.